All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Deep Dive live stream. We've been doing a few of these recently, which is awesome because I'm feeling like I lack social contact because the UK is in full lockdown. And so it's lovely to connect with friends across the pond on the other side of the world. Kay, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. I am thrilled to be here. Thanks for inviting me. As always, I can't believe we've done these. This is the fourth one.
It's the
So,
fourth one. Yeah, we've been doing it fairly often. I feel like these always just turn into sort of therapy sessions. So I sort of view you as my unofficial free therapist because I know there's
oh,
like life coaching is something that you charge for.
I love it. Actually, I actually just stopped doing life coaching.
Oh,
We
okay.
could talk
Why?
about that. Why? I stopped because so life coaching it can be quite a lucrative business. It's in my matrix. It's $1,000 work, high skill, low leverage, right? You can't go surfing while you're life coaching at the same time. So I really am committed. I've been writing a lot about finding leverage in my own life, in my business, and it's painful. Like coaching is a lot of times employers pay for my coaching, so it's a very lucrative thing. It's cash up front, so it's like 3 month engagement, but you get the cash today. But like I said, like you, I'm committed to just doing to practicing what I preach, and so the search this year is all about leverage.
Okay, that's very interesting because I've been thinking that hey, this coaching thing sounds fun and maybe I want to get into it, but it's yeah, it's the leverage thing that's been partly that's been holding me back. That and the imposter syndrome associated with how the hell can I be a coach anyway, and also an element
Mm,
of like yeah, like it is directly trading time for money. I was talking to about this to Chris Sparks yesterday. He is my
oh
productivity
yeah.
slash performance coach, and he was saying that for him, coaching is less about money per hour and more about making connections and really deep human connections with cool people across the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm curious as to why you gave up that side of the social side of it if we ignore the
Yeah.
money aspect of it.
It's a good question. So it's a little bit of a misnomer because I basically still kept my existing clients.
No,
I
okay.
just stopped taking new ones. And I would add as a creator, and obviously you don't violate any confidentiality things, but coaching is like a lens into the soul, right? I mean, we see it on these conversations. And so as a writer, you just like you're so imbued into people's deepest thoughts and fears and so on. So I did keep that, and I have a lot more. I'm very lucky because I get to pick who I work with on the coaching side. So it kind of like the best clients just kind of rose to the top and then kind of shut the door for future temporarily. The other thing though about coaching and just any like trading time for money type work is that you tend to undervalue the all the ancillary work that comes with that, right? So for example, coaching, high lucrative, high per hour rate, but you got to prepare. So 30, 45, if someone's paying you that much money, you better, go through all the notes, think about the questions, even just get in the right state of mind. The follow up, right? Sending up notes and things like that. Less of an issue, but still an issue. Scheduling, just like moving stuff around. Like this 1 hour chunk of time can really break up like a series of creative work. And so that there's all of these little costs. So like when you think about it, you're like, yes, the dollar per hour rate is quite high, but once you factor in like you have to factor in the cost of context switching,
Mm.
right? Remember like Paul Graham's maker versus manager schedule, where if you're a maker, even if you have a 20-minute meeting in the middle of your making session, there's a huge disproportionate cost that's way greater than 20 minutes. And so those things start to factor into play. And you know what, Ollie, there's another element of it is I wanted to burn the ships
Mm.
because coaching was kind of an easy lifeline away from building a business. It was kind of like it kind of made building a business a second priority because you could just tap this well of cash and it was there. It was quite easy to source at this point. Building a business is freaking hard. And building a business actually requires you to say, no, I don't want cash right now. Actually, what I need is time, focus, and commitment. And
Ah,
so that was a great way of burning. It's kind of like burning, like deleting Twitter or something, or you just like, or Nat Eliason and Tiago write about they like lock themselves out of their email and their assistant reads everything, right? Like
mm.
at some point you need to just rip the band-aid off and say like, I'm committed, I'm pot committed to doing this.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that you brought up maker and manager schedule because I was thinking about that earlier today, where I feel like once I discovered Calendly and just sort of willy-nilly sent my Calendly link to anyone who wanted to have a chat with me, I've now got like I'm very much a manager schedule. I have meeting and then half an hour break and then another call and then half an hour break, another call. I was thinking that, I'm supposed to be writing a book right now, and most of the value that I add in the business and to the world is in the creative work. And yet I'm spending all my time having these sort of one-on-one conversations, which are fun, but not particularly high leverage. And so
Mm.
I was just thinking earlier
10,
today.
10,000, right?
Yeah, exactly.
$10,000 is writing your book. That
Yeah.
is writing a book is the ultimate leverage for our world,
Yeah.
or many.
And so
I should do it. I'm a little bit of a wimp. I'm not like going for it.
nice. Why not?
Um, why am I not? So there's a pragmatic reason, which was when the CNN article on me came out a bunch of years ago. All these publishers like rushed to me and they're
Mm,
yeah like, hey, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. Kind of like trying to parlay that wave. But I actually wasn't ready to write a book then. And so I kind of like grinded. I wasn't a good writer. I didn't have enough experience. I didn't have my thing that I would write about. And so I spent 3 months writing a manuscript proposal and shopped it, and crickets.
mm,
So I was kind of defeated by it, to tell you the truth. And and so that was the first reason. But the second reason is a little bit more nuanced right now, because right now, where I'm at in my business is just magical. It's magical because I've got a very small team. And I basically created the life that I want to live, like pretty much exactly. So what do I mean by that? Never set an alarm. No meetings till noon Pacific time. Right? And I mean, I talk to people like you, and the reason why, I surf 2 hours every morning. But the thing is, you can't plan surfing. It's very reactive to the weather. So you need to like have large windows of time open, even if you want to maximize that like one great hour. Being around my kids all the time. I mean, maybe a little bit too much now with COVID, but like I want to be, I want to help them with the homework. I want to cook dinner. I want to put them to bed, all that. And to be honest, I don't want to be particularly stressed. One of my markers of wealth is how rushed do I feel. So if I'm bouncing from meeting to meeting, like I'm not wealthy.
mm.
My bank account might be higher, but I'm rushed. I'd rather have less money and never feel rushed than have more money and always feel rushed.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of landed, and again, I mean, I've spent 6 years, like trying to architect the mindset, the business, the move to California, like the financial stability. Like I spent all this time, trying to get to that. And I'm like, this is good. Like, yeah, I don't have to work till noon ever. Like, and I live a good, comfortable life. Like my finances are bulletproof. And so everyone that says it's like writing a book is, it, right? It's hard. Someone said you need to write 4 hours a day for, I think it was like a year or something. Maybe 2 years. I can't remember, but you have to change your life to write a book. And maybe that's the tension you're experiencing right now with the Calendly link and the deep work and all that. And it gets to a much more interesting question, right? Which is, what's enough, right? And I could raise money and build out Rad Reads. Like I could go fundraise and grow a team. I know that I could use a head of product, a head of social. I could do all that. I have product market fit. I don't want to do that. I don't want the life of someone who's taken money, who's taken investor money. And so that means that I'm foregoing what could be a very profitable business with a lot of leverage in the spirit of protecting. I've found my enough point. And in the spirit of protecting that, it actually requires me to say no to a lot of things.
Okay.
I'm leaving money on the table. Let me be complete. I'm leaving a lot of money on the table.
Okay. You're doing so in sort of a conscious kind of way.
I'm consciously leaving money on the table.
Yeah. So one thing I've done from today is like, I've got like tons and tons of random calendar events next week, but the week after I've decided that I'm going to block out basically from 8 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon for creative work, where my Calendly link won't allow anyone to book anything in that time. And I'm hoping that'll go some way towards because in writing this book, I have found that I do need to sort of now restructure my life around it, rather than around, hey, we actually need a video to come out next week and we need this stuff to be done and that stuff to be done. So I'm thinking if I treat that more as like, writing the book is my full-time job, and on the side I will do these other things, which is basically what I was doing when I was working as a doctor. Is like, that was my full-time job, and on the side I was putting out 3 videos a week. And so the videos a week still happens. It just happens in the evening, whereas I feel like, I should treat the book more seriously than I currently am.
Or here's something more extreme, right? I mean, I always get on these and I encourage you to work less, right? Remember, like after talk 2, you took, God forbid, you took a 1-week break from your newsletter. I'm taking 3 months off from creating content this summer. I've promised myself 3 months of no content. Unless I it comes out of me so violently that like my fingers start typing. But there is, right? I always think about like, will we ever look back on how we spent our time and kind of jokingly say with a smirk, like, wow, how absurd was it that I spent that much time on that? And to be funny, it's funny to say this to a YouTuber, which is why I haven't been able to like really, I haven't gotten into YouTube. It's like every time I start with YouTube, I'm spending 2 hours on thumbnails and researching thumbnails and messing around in Canva and all that stuff. And I still feel like I'm like, and that's when I have this moment with myself. I'm like Khe in 10 years, I'll be like 51. 10 years, 51-year-old Khe will look back and be like, can you believe how much time 31-year-old Khe spent on thumbnails? And so I really do apply that lens to my life. And look, there's no judgment on YouTube. There's a lot of ridiculous. I think 51-year-old Khe would look back at Khe and be like, can you believe that Khe thought it was such a crazy thing to take 3 months off of creating content, right? And it kind of feels obvious to me when you like zoom out in that perspective of your life, but when you're in it, I'm racing from one idea to another. And so I do think about like the expectations that we set for ourselves, and like where do those actually come from, right? And are they valid, with like very strong air quotes.
Yeah, I've sort of been thinking something similar, in that, like initially at the start of 2021, I was like, you know what? Last year we did 2 videos a week. This year we're going to do 3 videos a week. I got my team on board with this, and we made a schedule and everything. And then I was having one of these like coaching sessions. They were like, what's the highest priority thing you could be doing? I was like, well, writing the book. And then the guy asked, what's stopping you from writing the book? I said, making videos. Like, why are you making videos? I was like, well, I don't know, to grow the channel. And then we sort of realized that is there really much of a difference between 3 videos a week and 2 videos a week, or even between 2 videos a week and 1 video a week? I think doing stuff consistently,
or even 1 video a week, video
potentially, yeah, potentially. I think on YouTube the consistency does help. but
Hmm.
you get, say, severe diminishing returns from more and more output on that front.
Hmm.
And so we kind of dialed it down to 2 per week, which has felt somewhat manageable. But even this week, the two a week felt a little bit much. And it was
Hmm.
only earlier today that I filmed a video that's coming out on Sunday, and I was like, come on, I should be better at managing my time, given that people consider me a productivity guru, so as not to be doing things at the last minute. But
Yeah, yeah. Well, it does. It does come back to why. Like, why do you want this? So I give you a story. I gave this presentation on goal setting, and I asked everyone to come up with some goals that they had for the year. And one person came up with a goal that was generate $2,000. He had a full-time job, generate $2,000 of passive income per month. Total legit goal. You know, you and I have messed with versions of that goal. And so I asked him the 5 whys. It's like a Toyota TPS inquiry method. Ask why 5 times. You know, Simon Sinek has some version of this. And so at first he's like, well, I would like to have more free time. Okay. Why do you want more free time? I don't want to be beholden to someone else's expectations. And why do you not want to be beholden to someone else's expectations? Because I want to explore other areas of my life. Why do you want to explore other areas of my life? And I forget the fourth one, but by the fifth one, he goes, because I don't really know who I am and what I stand for. So think about the starting point. $2,000 a month of Shopify income or whatever the F, he was thinking about. And what he really wanted was to understand himself better and to know what he stood for. Right? Is a Shopify store really, right? And so I always apply that to myself, which is like, well, why do you want more subscribers, or why do you want more income, or why? And like at the end of the day, you can get into these circular loops, right? Where you're like, because well, more subscribers is better, and more money gets, more subscribers gives you more business opportunity. But then it's like, well, why do you want more business opportunity? And then like you're either like in this infinite loop, or you get to this point where it's just like, well, I just want to be a good father, right? Or I just want to, explore my passions, or like learn more about myself. And you get trapped in these things where you're like in this hamster wheel that's like video, subscribers, income, video, subscribers, income. But like on the side, it's like, I have a really difficult relationship with my father, and I wish I could fix that, right? And like somehow that gets roped into that hamster wheel, and that's the distraction, right? I say like $10 work or dopamine stuff or anything that drives clicks. I've been thinking about this. It's a mechanism of self-soothing. It's like, I don't know the task that I'm supposed to be doing, or I know that there's something more uncomfortable in me, like a bad relationship with my boss or imposter syndrome or whatever. And it's like, let me just go back to inbox zero, or creating videos, or sending in a newsletter. Because that is just like, I could just do that. It's like, I've been thinking a lot that type of behavior is like, it's a way of, it's almost like drinking. Right? It's a way to like soothe yourself and make yourself feel okay, right? You actually feel momentarily okay once you get to inbox zero. But it's just like alcohol, right? Like you feel good after that drink, but 2 hours later, whatever anxiety drove you to have that drink, assuming you're drinking because you're anxious, comes right back. And I really do think that so much of the like productivity stuff of note taking and GTD and second brains and all that stuff is a mechanism of self-soothing.
yeah, so I have like a long list of things I wanted to talk to you about.
Let's do it.
On so this book that I'm writing is about productivity. Oh, hey, August Bradley, he's in the chat, hanging out. Had a chat with August as well
What's up, guys?
about this sort of stuff. He's keen on the whole meaning, values, vision. What are your actual
Totally.
goals? So this book's about productivity, and I want it to be about like meaningful productivity. And so the first sort of bit of the book, we're thinking it's all very rough first draft right now, but we're thinking we talk about the idea of meaning in kind of 3 time horizons. And I'd love to run this by you and just kind of get your sort of off the top of your head thoughts about this, where on one level, the most zoomed out level, we've got kind of meaning of life type meaning, like, you know, what are the things that makes my whole life meaningful?
Mm-hmm.
One level zoomed in, we've got meaningful goals, like what are, you know, having figured out what makes my life meaningful and therefore what my values are and therefore what my like vision for the future would be. Let me break that down into a series of goals. And so something
Mm-hmm.
that August talks about is you have these value goals and you have goal outcomes. So a value goal would be something like, I want to be really healthy. Whereas a goal outcome would be, I want 20% body fat percentage and 75 kilograms of lean body mass by next, you know, a smart, traditional smart goal. And then you break down that goal into habits or projects. So that's like the meaningful
Mm-hmm.
goals thing. And then the third bit is meaningful tasks or a meaningful day. Like, what are the things that I can do to make sure that the way that I'm using my time day to day is meaningful, i.e., taking me towards my wider goal slash mission slash whatever. Does that kind of general view of meaning resonate with you at all? Yeah, just any general thoughts on that?
Yeah. Wow. So I do very much think of my life in those in that kind of continuum. But and feel free to shoot this
Mm.
down for me if it's actually too philosophical. But the question I would start with, like, is we keep using meaning. So there's like, daily meaning and, intermediate meaning. But what is meaning? Is meaning utility? Like I've contributed something into the world? Is meaning joy? Like I'm happy, which leads to another question, like what is happiness? Is meaning a sense of like peace and calm? Like the thoughts in my head are, very calm, like still like a pond versus tumultuous, like a tornado. Is it my capability and capacity to give love and receive love? Right? Love has to fall somewhere in this question of meaning. And I'm not just talking about romantic love. It could be, love, like faith driven love. I mean, well, let's keep faith out of this just because it adds a whole nother level of it. And I'm an agnostic, so I can't really speak about faith. But love, right? Loving others, loving your kids, loving your spouse, romantic love, the love of beauty, right? And so I would zoom you out and be
Mm.
like, well, in that framework, what what is meaning? And then we could like drill down because if meaning is utility, which I would say is probably the traditional, like in this audience, which is a very problematic way of seeing the world. And I see the world this way too. So I'm kind of criticizing myself, my own worldview. But utility, if it's utility, then it's all about like maximizing units of output, of good output into the world, right? But what if it's like, what if what if it's love, right? Well, how does that change? Like, are your goals less about yourself and more about the people that you love? And again, I'm not using like romantic
Mm.
love of community, love of friendship, right? Is a meaningful life having high quality relationships, or is it leaving with a legacy, or is it solving a problem that the world needs to be solved, right? The traditional cancer, solving cancer, climate change, etc.
Yeah, those are all like some of the questions that, well, people have been grappling with for millennia and that I'm now grappling with in pursuit of writing this
Totally.
thing. Um, the way that I'm sort of approaching it is that we all like a meaningful life. There's no universal definition of meaning. Um, we all have our own individual definitions of meaning, and so what I'm trying to get at is: are there any useful thought experiments or exercises or things that we can do to help figure out like what is my personal definition of meaning that I want to be working towards, and
Mm,
recognizing that that might well change over time, and that's okay. But at least right now is kind of a rough first draft. what are the things that I find meaningful, and what would I want my sort of life meaning to be about? Do you
Mm-hmm.
do you know of any of those sorts of questions that I'm getting at? Anything that you found helpful to
Yeah.
consider?
So there's, I mean, there are so many in there. So one of them would be, what is the world, right? What is the world that I want to inhabit, right? How do I want the world that I inhabit to look,
Hmm.
right? Is it a world where, is it a world where that is more just? Is it a world that is more that is kinder? Is it a world that's more, I don't know, educated, or growth mindset oriented, right? And so I would say I do think that there's an element of future casting
Hmm.
that is helpful, right? You know what? So you can think about that if you have kids, for example. This exercise becomes a bit easier when you have children, because there is a part of, for me at least, it's like the first time that I realized, like, oh, life's not about me, right? And so, if, again, but that's got to be a derivation. That's got to be the path through which you found meaning, right? So, like, if you were in *Sapiens*, right, the whole argument of *Sapiens* is that kind of we have become gods to ourselves, right? And it's all in the pursuit of a higher self, Maslow's hierarchy, self-determination, like all of that. So that is a very kind of Western way of looking at meaning. So I guess you asked, like, what are some of the questions, right? Like, what is the world that I want to inhabit, or that I
Hmm.
want my kids to inhabit? Another one, there's the classic, deathbed test. I'm not like a huge fan of memento moris,
Hmm.
of kind of using death to catalyze desire. But I don't remember it off the top of my head, but that the very classic five regrets of the dying was
Yeah.
like, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had I had the courage to take more risks.
Hmm.
I believe one of them, I wish I spent more time with my friends.
Yeah.
I
I
forget
wish
the
I'd
other
lived a
two.
life true to myself rather than what was expected of me, and
Yeah.
I can't remember the last one. But yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you don't buy that too much?
Well, I do buy that. I don't like the approach. Like,
Okay.
there's an app called the Croak app
Oh, okay.
that basically, like, sends you a notification every day that's like, you have, it takes like your age, your life expectancy, and divides by, minuses your current age and divides by like the number of days, like
Mm.
365. And it basically says, like, you have, 14,000 days on this earth left, use them wisely. I think that kind of thinking, that like, we're gonna die, so maximize the time on Earth, can, like, it just naturally puts you in a fight or flight mode, and a mode of fear, and like, there's not enough. And I don't think that it lets your true essence shine as much, right? Like, you don't make good decisions when you're fearful. I don't think you should categorically discard memento moris, but I'm always like a little bit, oh, like, well, what if you could invert that? And like, if you could live forever, what would be the example of a joyful day? Maybe, like, that would be the inverse of that
Mm.
question.
Yeah, this is something I think
I just
about a
made
lot
that
as well. Like it's pretty classic to say, hey, which of these are you most going to regret on your deathbed? But
Yeah.
that's a very long time horizon, and there are a lot of, I don't know. I feel like there are a lot of things that we do. A lot of work comes into this. Where if you were thinking, if I was gonna die tomorrow, I probably wouldn't do any work. If I'm dying a year from now, I probably wouldn't. If I'm dying 2 years from now, Maybe I would. Yeah, like the work thing is
Well,
interesting.
so
Yeah.
that's an Airbnb interview question. I've heard this is a rumor. I've read it on Twitter somewhere.
Oh yeah.
I think is if you had a year to live, would you take this job?
Oh wow. Okay. Surely the answer is no.
Well, let me tell you. Let me give you a story.
Yeah.
I worked for a while at the media company Quartz,
Yeah.
and there were two colleagues of mine who had terminal cancer.
Oh okay.
They both passed, and they both worked up until they couldn't work. Not because of financial reasons or healthcare reasons. They worked because it was Quartz is a magical place, and it's gone through a lot of changes, but they loved their colleagues. They were respected by their bosses, so there was no like BS, FaceTime, that kind of stuff, and they found their work meaningful. Journalists love being journalists. Like it's a real, it's one of those jobs like medicine where it's in their blood. They want to do it. That right there should tell you a lot about what we find meaningful. Terminal cancer, man. Because what's the alternative? Or what's an alternative?
Yeah. I mean,
Sit,
I guess the
sit and have friends
alternative.
visit you.
Yeah. I guess the alternative speaks to that thing we were discussing last time, which is let's say you weren't working. Like, what would you fill up your hours with? There's only so many
Yeah,
hangouts with friends that you can have, and only so much painting and writing you can do until you still have like large amounts of time. And I guess,
totally. Which, by the way, is another way to kind of identify that meaning question. But
yeah,
I swear to God, I'm telling that story totally truthfully. Two people in 1 year.
yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Do you ever think about like what your personal values are, and if so, or do you when you're coaching other people, is that something that you think about at all?
I think I've always I found values to be quite challenging because they're kind of like those motivational posters that you see in a guidance counselor's office. It's like courage, and there's like a drop of water, and it's like purple or something like that. And I think the challenge that I have with values is that you always land on things like integrity, respect, compassion, kindness, curiosity. And I don't know, it feels too it it's like a horoscope.
Yeah.
Like you could read any horoscope and be like, that's me. And I feel like that approach to values, and I'm going to say I haven't spent a lot of time investigating it. So I don't personally have values. One thing that I have liked, and I've just started doing this, is picking 3 words to define your year. That feels much more like manageable and accessible. And it's still like, because if you think of values, it's a little bit of a true north, right? It's kind of a very quick filter for, I guess, your morality to some extent, but maybe put that aside for now. It's maybe a filter for your activity, right? So my 3 words for the year are teach, breathe, and creativity, not create by definition.
Nice.
And so when a new project comes my way, or I set a new goal for myself, I can quickly zoom out to those 3 words. And breathe, by the way, is because I've over the past, since COVID, like I've suffered from a lot of burnout. And I need to take care of my health because I've been charging really, really hard to stay on the content hamster wheel. And so that's a reminder to me to look through all my activities, all my projects, all my goals through the lens of what breathe says to me, which breathe is like a motivational way of saying, don't burn yourself out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's like a much more accessible way because with values, like one way of doing it is finding a quote list of values on the internet and then picking your top 10 and then crossing out seven of them and picking your top three.
Yeah.
And I always get to things like autonomy and freedom and you know, personal growth and things like that. And I think, yeah, I think to an extent the exercise is useful, but one of the things I'm investigating for this book is there any actual, like, you know, is there any, are there any social science studies that have been done on the topic of values, and does living in accordance with a certain number of values actually help us live a more meaningful life? I'm not sure. I don't know
Yeah.
what the answer is. So that's that's something I'm trying to investigate right now.
Well, TJ, I'll buy the book for sure. 100
Yes.
copies or so. Um, but what I'll be keen to know, because I have struggled with that, because I think that values can be a lot like a Hallmark card or a horoscope, where you're just
Mm,
like, you feel good about. I think you feel good about yourself. It's like, I am a person of integrity. Yes, I am good.
yeah.
But like, what does that really mean? And would you ever not be a person of integrity? Right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think the interesting thing with values is when you're only allowed to pick like three of them or five of them,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah.
I want to be integrity. I want to be authenticity. I want to be love. I want to be relationship. I want to be teaching. I want to be all this stuff. But I'm only allowed five. Okay,
Yeah.
so what am I five going to
Yeah.
be? At that point, it's like, well, do I really care about integrity? I care more about freedom than I care about integrity. Or do I? Maybe, you know, would I give up my integrity for freedom? Probably not. So maybe I do care about it. And I like anytime I try this, I sort of end up in those sorts of I'm not
Totally.
I'm not sure if I care about one other thing. So we've talked about meaning, which we talked a little bit about values. Do you find it useful at all to have a sort of future vision, like 5 years from now, what your life would be like, or 10 years, or 25 years, or anything like that that you do?
I do. I do occasionally, like one, 1 or 2 years. So like I like to write letters to myself, like future K writing a letter to current K,
Mm.
or current K telling future K why he made a certain decision. I find this like actually really powerful around basically it's like a decision. I'm answering your question from the inverted side, but I like to remember why I made specific decisions so I can go back and look at them. Look at, am I living consistently with how I said I would live, uh, how I would make that decision, right? And to me, one of the real benefits to that is to avoid moving the goal lines on myself, right? The hedonic
Mm.
adaptation, which is why I've gotten to this point where I'm saying no to so much financial growth, because for so long I've been checking in with myself. It's like, well, what is it that you really want, right? That exercise that we talked about the other day, which the other session, which is what would you do if you didn't have to work for money, right? And so I kind of have those back and forth conversations. So like a year ago, you said you would do this if once you received financial security, or you felt good about the trajectory of rad reads. So that would be one. The other that I do is I use it more around the beginning of the year. Is like just kind of future cast 1 year ahead and kind of write to myself from 2022 K and say, oh, what a year it's been. Da 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 happened. Da 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 da. This is how you felt.
Mm.
And so I don't. I don't know. Maybe like when I was younger, I would probably be like, in 10 years, I want to be a managing director. It was very kind of outcome focused dreaming. I think definitely with maturity, I've definitely been. I don't know. I really feel much more compelled to really enjoy the day in front of me. Like, I know it sounds like so basic, but I'm like, I want today to be the best day. I don't want to really think that there's a difference between a Saturday or a Sunday or a holiday and a weekday, or a winter day and a summer day. It's like, how can I make this one day awesome. And so that has kind of actually, I guess, like, I mean, I am a productivity person, but in some degree, like, I'm a productivity person, like I'm an anti-productivity person that's really trying to use productivity to be more present, right? There's this quote it's from the Dan Harris book, 10% Happier. And he says, human beings love to dwell in the past or live in the future. And he says, with one foot in the past and one foot in the future, you're pissing on the present. And that very much encapsulated a big chunk of my adult life, really, when I was on that kind of corporate grind, where I was just like, when's the next thing? When's the next promotion? When's the next bonus? When's the next drink? When's the next vacation? When's the next, bachelor party? Just next. Or wasn't it awesome when we did this? Wasn't it awesome when we did this? Wasn't it awesome when we did this? And in the present moment, I was like suffering tremendously, where I was just like, this sucks. This present moment sucks. Get me to tomorrow.
So, question on that front. I guess a lot of the stuff that I've read at the moment around meaning is like the whole like life meaning thing is based around it like as we talked about before, utility, like, in what way am I being useful to the world? And a lot of that is based on thinking about the future and that, okay, here's what I'm doing right now and here's what I want to be doing to have some sort of impact and things like that. Therefore, I will feel like I will have lived a meaningful life if I can achieve X level of impact. And it's that balance between that and the sort of still enjoying each day on its own merit and smelling the roses and, journey before destination and stuff. And I think it's
beautiful tension.
It's like that tension between, self-improvement and self-acceptance that I'm totally happy with where I am right now and loving life, but also, I still have goals to an extent, and it would still be nice to actually write this book. I mean, I could just not write the book, and that would be fine as well. But it would be kind of fun. It would be interesting. It would be cool. It's an interesting game to play.
Well, the utility thing is a very complicated one, and here's a memento mori, in that a conversation that I had with one of my life coaches. We were talking about, well, why does utility matter? And it kind of ended as this memento mori, where it was, how many people do you want at your funeral? Would you rather have 20 people, close family members, that, celebrate the life that you lived, or 5,000, weak ties that, we surfed together, we played golf together? For me, there is something scary about, I mean, first of all, visualizing your funeral is a bizarre thing because you won't be there. But there was something scary about it, there being only 20 people. And there is, I think so much of this, all these questions come back to your childhood. I think we've dabbled on this in the past, but I think that one of my biggest fears, I know that one of my biggest fears as a child and as a teenager was being loved and being accepted. And it was like being loved by friends, not by my parents, but being loved by classmates and friends, finding romantic love, finding, I was a Magic the Gathering playing, nice. Skinny nerd, before nerds were cool in, 1994. So much. So if you take that young child and take that, me visualizing my funeral, it's actually the same fear that wants there to be 5,000 people at my funeral than 20. It's that same like yearning to be loved. I would say that motivates me to write rad reads in some way, right? I love when people say like, wow, the thing you wrote really impacted me, right? It makes me feel loved. And, I've got a loving wife, incredible parents and in-laws and kids and all that, but it doesn't make that yearning like those, that wiring, this should be something you explore in your book, is like that wiring. Like if you felt like you couldn't be, you know, you were scared of never being loved when you were 12 years old or something, there's probably some point where that hardens and you feel that for your whole life, like almost like regardless of what happens. It's like people that grew up with financial stress and financial trauma, like parents living paycheck to paycheck. Maybe they're homeless. Like even when they have, you know, tons of money in their bank account, they still will walk 20 minutes to avoid an ATM fee, right? It's that wiring from that formative place in your life that you need to, you know, again, to get a little spiritual with you or a little woo, like that part of me needs to heal still, right? And I think that I haven't really investigated those emotions, right? I've investigated kind of my goals and like, why do I write rad reads? But I haven't like really like gone down to that layer. And so I don't even remember how we got on this topic, but I think there's like a real interconnection between what you do every day, how you felt as a child, and how you see your life at its end, right? I think they're actually quite tightly coupled, but we just may not fully appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, this question of how many people do you want at your funeral? There's a, I guess, sort of related question that I've been pondering recently, which is, what do you want written on your gravestone?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, damn, that's interesting. And if I think about that for myself, it's like some combination of loving father,
Get the most
like
YouTube subscribers
yeah, huge, sort of
in the history of the universe.
had more subscribers than PewDiePie, something like that. It's like some combination of like loving father, good husband, and like inspirational teacher, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
People in the chat, I would be interested to hear if you could have like one, you know, something written on your gravestone. What would that be for you? Because I think I've been reading a book as well. I think it's How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton
Oh
Christensen,
yeah.
which is
Christians.
really
Yeah.
good.
Great, talented man.
Talking about how, you know, the things that we all really ultimately want are associated with the, hey, I want to be good to my kids and I want to have like a nice family and stuff. And so few, like if you ask what do you want to be said at your funeral, you probably don't want it to be that, you know, this person helped increase the returns on our fund by 0.1%. Like, even though that would be the sort of thing you spend your entire life trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the answer to that question, maybe the third bit would be different for a lot of people. So like my housemate is very interested in sort of helping women around the world, and so probably her gravestone would want to have something that, you know, she was a made a dent in the world in some way towards helping women's education or something like that, which is a very specific aim. Mine is very much sort of teacher focused, as opposed to great doctor who saved many lives. Like that
Mm-hmm.
that thing, like great doctor saved many lives, does not resonate with me in the slightest in terms of meaning. Is that something that
Yeah.
you've ever thought about?
So I think about that often because maybe I could say, let me say this in a what will sound a bit weird, is that my wife has told me, my wife Lisa said, like, our marriage would be stronger if you were less ambitious,
Oh, okay.
because ambition for me, it is there's like, it has a drug like quality, right? And if you go back to that desire to feel love, like I write an email and then, you know, I have, you know, 27 responses that are like, wow, you're so smart, or like, that's so cool, you know? And I think that, um, you know, if you really distill that question, right? Like, you know, that, not that question, what you said is, I want to be a loving father. I want to
Mm.
be a great husband. I think that, at least in the world that I'm in, like the corporate world, the Western, the United States, a lot of people say that, but they actually don't, their actions don't support that. And so anytime there is that disconnect, it's a moment of like deep exploration. Now, most people will run from that exploration because that's a horrible revelation about yourself, which is like, I actually rather would work than be a good dad. Right. And I've seen this, right? I've seen this so much where in COVID, the number of folks, and they're primarily men, that are like, I'm around my kids too much. I can't wait for the office to reopen.
Yeah, that's sort of what you said earlier in this, perhaps too much time around my kids, which I wrote down to pick you up on. I feel like, hey.
Well, they say those were the same dads that were saying like, I work so hard so that I could, that would want that I'd be I was a great father on my graveyard. So what gives there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Where's that disconnect?
Right. I think for me, and we've talked about this in the past, I think for me it's very simple, is that my self-worth is tied to my achievement. Okay. So if I achieve more, I feel better about myself. If I achieve less, I feel worse about myself. And in worlds, which is why I'm a left brain thinker, which is why I gravitated towards finance, right? Everything's measurable, right? So it's very comforting to be able to measure your self-worth like numerically. And that's why I would imagine that subconsciously there's a reason why I like being a creator, because it is very creative, but at the same, it's a lot like finance, right? Where, there's algorithms, which are markets, there's smaller accounts, which is like your stock price, right? It's pretty similar in some regards. It definitely plays on the same parts of your brain, right? And so that's something that is really to those of you listening, like anytime you say something and your actions indicate otherwise, there's a very, very unique opportunity to like pull off one of your layers and look into your soul. Be like, something's wrong. And I think that we have been taught, again, talking like US corporate, society, like the bubble that I grew up in, that whenever that feeling comes, just work more. Or have a drink. Or go buy an experience. Like that's like we keep cycling through, at first it was like, just work harder. Then it was like, make more money. And now it's like, well, experiences are what really matter. So like go to Coachella, right? Whenever that feeling arises, like buy something, basically. Do something or buy something. And so I would invite everyone to really, and there's no answer here, but like that is where the point of inquiry begins. It's like, why do I actually not enjoy spending this amount of time with my kids when I say that that's my most important value?
Yeah. I think to an extent there is, with the whole spending time with kids thing, I imagine that if and when I become a father and have kids, hopefully, there will be a sweet spot of time spent with the kids. Like spending 24/7 with the kids is probably suboptimal for me and for them. Spending no time with the kids is probably suboptimal. There's a sweet spot somewhere there. And I feel like, I guess that would be a way of reconciling the fact that for a lot of people, the pandemic is forcing them to spend more time with their families, which they feel, not a huge fan of this, because that's beyond the kind of sweet spot in terms of time.
But I would add one more dimension, which is your presence when you're there, right? And I do this too. I call it one-handed parenting. Yeah. It's like you're on the swing set pushing your kids, and then you're reading CNN on your phone,
reading Hacker News,
or you have a beer, right? A lot of fathers, and again, I've been in this trap before. Like It's like they find it more fun to play with their kids when they're drinking. And look, kids make you want to drink. That's a universal fact. So, but again, there's a limit to that. And so I do agree that there is this like number. I also would tell you that it's very non-stationary.
Yeah.
And I would say that there is a third component that's like an energetic component where you could be, and I've been guilty of this many times. Like I'm around a lot, but I'm totally checked out mentally. I'm just like thinking about something. I'm just not there.
So when Lisa says something like, "Hey Khe, I think our marriage would be stronger if you were less ambitious," how does that make you feel?
It's taken me a while to realize that my ambition is a source of my own suffering. So I agree with her, but I need to work through what I'm going to do about it. Right. And so there is a part of me that has to be okay with like knowing that Rad Reads is not going to be its full economic potential.
Yeah.
Because of decisions so that's where I go immediately, because I do think that, I've been very fortunate that like, if Rad Reads doesn't hit its economic potential, my life is fine. My financial life is fine. My soul might not feel fine in that situation, but my financial life is fine.
Why is your soul tied to the financial success of Rad Reads?
Well, my soul is tied to achievement.
Okay.
Like I feel better about myself when I'm achieving. And if I just sit around, looking at the waves or staring at nature, I don't feel as good about myself.
So do you?
And I think, yeah.
Have you got this sort of, what does the graph look like? Sort of achievement versus self-worth. Is it like linear or is it like diminishing return? Like, what does it kind of look like for you?
God, man, I don't even know how to answer that, because that assumes that you could actually graph the relationship. But let me give it a shot. I would suspect that there is like a bit of fake it till you make it in it, meaning that, when you're just starting out, just like as you start to get some wins, in your job, in your life, in your finances, like the momentum feeds on itself.
Yeah.
And so like you kind of like, you have an exponential type curve. But I would suspect that it flattens quite quickly, right? And there's many reasons why we've talked about it flattening quite quickly. The deathbed, the 5 regrets of the dying, the things on your tombstone, like none of those, like you said, like no one was like he was the most prolific creator on the planet. Like no one wants, like we know intellectually that we don't care about that.
Yeah. But
our hearts don't, our emotions don't let us not care about that, because I don't know. I do come back to this like drug-like quality of it, because it feels good, so you want more of it. And then people around you start saying, when you start achieving, people around you are like, oh, he's really good at this, and like he bought this house, or he doesn't work on weekdays, and and I think that very quietly, like that, you start to build yourself up from hearing those things. And so when someone meets you and you're like, yeah, like, how's the business? I'm like, oh, it's the same as last year. Like you actually, like a small part of you doesn't feel okay with that. Right. And so to answer your question, I think that it probably diminishes way earlier than we realize. And then when we realize, I think when the first time you start to realize it is like the midlife crisis. right? Where you're just kind of like, okay, you know, I had kids, I got promoted, I don't like live paycheck to paycheck anymore, I've got a nice house. Is this it? Right? I think that's like the first moment where you start to realize the disconnect between those, you know, the flatlining of that. But then you go on to this journey. It's like, well, if I help others and if I live more impactful, then, you know, I can like bring it back up again, you know, or bring that happiness back up. But again, there is, and again, I don't fully understand this about myself, but it's one of the Buddhist koans, which is desire is suffering. Mm. Like when you desire something, you by definition set yourself up to suffer. So whether it's, you know, YouTube followers, money, or even desiring to be a good father, right? And again, we're definitely like reaching the contours of my understanding of Eastern philosophy. So I don't want to say much more because I am definitely pedestrian in my knowledge thereof. But you know, some people define happiness as the absence of desire. Hmm. And so if you truly want to be happy, you need to eliminate your desires. And that's everything from the car that you drive, the waves to be good, even your kids to be happy. You know, there is a dissolution of that. And so again, I can't talk so profusely about that topic, but it's an interesting kernel of an idea that desire is suffering. And I think, I mean, look at Western culture. There's a lot of, we have built a culture like on the back of desire.
Yep.
And so, and we are, again, I don't know the metrics, but we are a culture, the Western world does have a high amount of suffering, anxiety, you know, as measured through anxiety, as measured through addiction, as measured through, you know, different mental health criteria.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. Taking an entirely different route. So we've got another 20 minutes or so. Skipping ahead in this sort of structure I've got in my head for the book. One of the things I want to talk about is, and this is such a state switch, is how we can use elimination, automation, and delegation to help reduce the time that we have to spend on stuff.
Because we're all gonna die.
Because we're all gonna die, exactly. So, any thoughts on that? Because you're big on the whole leverage thing, so that must require some level of deciding what to do and what not to do.
The automation, yeah. So in my matrix, in my 2x2 matrix, automation falls in the $100 work category. So it's high leverage, low skill. I would say that, you know, you could think of automation, and you could even put systems in a lot of that, right? So on one end, automation is really, really powerful because it frees you from having to do a lot of repetitive tasks. It frees your time. So you do scale yourself. But I think one of the more powerful things about automation is that it frees your mind space, right? And so one of the things that I love about GTD, David Allen's productivity framework, which I would put in like learning GTD is $100 task. Like there's a lot of leverage in it, but you know, Jeff Bezos doesn't use GTD, right? He's, you know, calling up the Treasury Secretary and not getting regulated, you know, things like that. So, and so GTD is a way of closing what David Allen says, close open loops, right? So all these like fragments of ideas laying in your head. So that's one, systems are a way to create leverage, right? So that would be one way to do it. Another way to do it is through process. And so I'm a huge believer in SOPs with my team. If you ever do the same thing 3 times, if you ever write the same email, if you ever answer the same question 3 times, automate it. And by automate that, I mean like write it in a Google Doc or write it in a text expander so that you have that ease of use. And then the third one, and I'll come back to answer it, which this is a little bit more focused on small business entrepreneurs and creators, solopreneurs like you and I. I think no code automation through Zapier is like incredible. I mean, Zapier to me, if you ask me how much I would pay for Zapier, which is an automation platform, basically, I would pay like 10 grand a year for Zapier. That's how much value it creates in my business. And an annual subscription is $700.
Okay. So digging into that a bit, like in terms of process, a big part, my understanding of the process is mostly that if you're doing something multiple times, turn it into an SOP, and then you can outsource it to someone else. Does To what extent does the process thing apply? Let's say if you're a student and you don't have much money to pay to outsource to someone, is it still useful, or is it more a case of forget the SOPs and focus on automation instead?
Well, I would say that you definitely won't have the resources to pay someone, although, with like Upwork and, you might actually still be able to, depending on the task. But I think the real point is to preserve mind space and to preserve time. So whatever you can do
Checklists
to preserve
and stuff.
mind space and to exactly.
Yeah.
Checklist manifesto, right?
Yeah, it's really useful stuff. That's a good point. I didn't think of checklists as part of process, but that really does preserve mind space. If you can just mindlessly go through a checklist, it just saves you having to remember the steps yourself.
Totally. And to David Allen point, close open loops.
Yeah.
Right. Open loops create anxiety. Anxiety is just not enjoyable, but also is to use in productivity land is like a time cost, resource cost.
What other ways do you find automation helps? So Zapier, you're a big fan of. Are there any other? What are the general? So in the book, I'm trying to avoid mentioning specific tools because then it gets very outdated very quickly. So are there general principles of automation that you like to apply?
Yes. So one comes from my Wall Street days. Right when I joined Wall Street, the first, they would teach you how to make these complex financial models in Excel, and then they would unplug your mouse, and you'd have to create the model without touching the mouse. And so again, it's $100 work, but I think not the ability to not use your mouse is a great form of leverage. And so you don't even need to talk about that in terms of tools. I mean, what are the tools that require you to not use your mouse? Alfred, Superhuman, Text Expander, et cetera, et cetera. And I think more and more, all apps are learning that there's a distinct group of users that don't want to use their mouse. And so the ability to not use your mouse, you can count the number of minutes that it saves you per year. It might be, like 72 minutes a year or something like that. But that's not the true savings. The true saving is like every time you switch context, every time your brain changes its context a little bit, there's a cost to re-enter the state of mind that you were in before. And I've heard that cost can be anything from like 30 seconds to 23 minutes. It depends on what you are working on.
So how does not using your mouse help you not switch contexts?
Well, because it just slows you down, right? So there's just an extra set of actions that will slow you down. I mean, the mouse will definitely the mouse. We're splitting hairs on the mouse one, but if you think about it, right? If you're writing a long email to someone, and you need a mix of links and formatting, and you might need to grab a file, all of those things add up.
Yeah.
Are like little mini context switches, like adding an attachment.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. It's like if I'm doing something and I need to snap a window to the side, I have a keyboard shortcut, bang, 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 and without even thinking about it, it happens. Or if I'm doing some work and I want to start my Spotify instrumental playlist, just like, a few taps, Alfred, SPO, enter, spacebar, and then Command W, and in like half a second I will have started some music and just not even realize that I've done it. And So in a way,
It's
if I was doing mouse, 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 click, 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 that would be a level of context switching, which would
and you
be,
could
yeah,
find it's going to depend on the nature of your work. But for example, I send a lot of emails like pitches and stuff like that with a lot of links. And so I have a catalog of 200 of my links. So like if I want to reference, our first talk was the most popular one, so that's the one I link to often. I do colon Ali, and then it
yes,
drops that link in. And if I want to do the second one, which was less popular, I'll do colon Abdal, because like I know that like I'm least likely to share the second one, but like I want to have it handy anyway. So I could write an email with pre-populated text, links, and all that. That would be like a page long and
yeah.
like a really powerful email in like 20 seconds.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, because I was in two minds about including the keyboard shortcut thing, because it's like, well, you're not saving that much time, but you are actually saving a lot of context switching time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
And
got,
it's context switching. It's like context switching on something that you find really unenjoyable, right? So let's use the example of links.
yeah,
If you didn't do that, you'd alt tab into a Google window, search Ali Abdal Khe Hy YouTube, click your mouse to grab the link, alt tab back, control V just for one link.
yeah,
Like, even though that's not that much time, it's four really, really, really not enjoyable steps.
mm,
So they're more punitive.
yeah. The less enjoyable it is, the more punitive it is when you have to do it.
Totally. Totally. You might not even write that email. I
Yeah,
hated writing emails links. I hate that. Then you gotta land your cursor in the right place too. Like,
yeah, yeah. It's like when I started creating iOS keyboard replacement snippets for my most popular videos. Suddenly, I was replying to so many more comments because it's like someone asks, "Bro, what keyboard is that?" And I have an affiliate link on a
totally.
hotkey. Someone's asking, "How do you manage your time?" I have my video called "How I Manage My Time" on a hotkey. Someone else, "How do you spin your pen?" I have literally have my pen spinning video on a hotkey.
Yep.
And it's just like bang, bang. Like while I'm on the toilet, I can answer like 10 people, and then people feel happy that, oh my god, I got a reply from Ali Abdal. And it's like, yeah, why not?
The affiliate stuff, it drives revenue. Like
Yeah,
I think it adds up. Look, you're not gonna grow your business using
sure.
keyboard shortcuts,
Yeah.
but you will make yourself happier and in the process.
Is there stuff that uh, I guess one of the things I want to talk about is delegation and how, like, I think a lot of people have an instant to delegation because they're like, well, I don't have money, therefore I can't delegate. But actually, I think in real life, we actually delegate. Like, if you go to a restaurant, you're delegating the preparation of the meal to the chef. If you're like, going to the doctor, you're delegating management of your health to the professional. Like, I think there's just, it's not that hard to delegate your laundry or your email or to, other things that you might not want to do. It's just that we have like, we have this barrier for like, oh my God, that is only for people who are like either really rich or like really snooty and, think that they're too good to do their own laundry. That sort of stuff. Is that something that you've kind of seen in your coaching people at all?
Yes, it's actually, so there's a lot of research. The main person who writes about this is a phenomenal researcher. Her name's Ashley Willens.
Oh,
You should
okay.
definitely talk to her for your
Yeah.
book. And her starting argument is that it's very, very well known that one of the highest ways that we can boost our happiness is to buy back our time in little ways that you described: house cleaner, gardener,
Yeah.
paying for laundry, ordering food, ordering takeout, things like that. And yet we find it very, very problematic to do that. In fact, there's a weird statistic where as people become wealthier, they live further from their office because that's where the bigger houses are. If you
Yeah.
live in a city, and they increase their commute time, even though a commute is a very, very known predictor of lifetime satisfaction.
Yeah.
So we actually make a lot of very weird decisions when it comes to buying back our time. And so I definitely do believe in that. Again, though, and there's so many little ways, right? Taking an Uber versus the subway, right, is a way of buying back your time. I think that is a very well known, documented scientific or scientific phenomenon. However, you can take it overboard.
Yeah.
Because some of the most rewarding activities are these little mundane activities where you just, there's a Buddhist poem that's like, chop wood, carry water, eat, chop wood, carry water, repeat, or something like that, right? Yeah. There's actually a lot of joy to be found in washing your dishes. But if you convert that to the time, the opportunity cost of your time, and hire a TaskRabbit to do that, that's introduces a whole new, web of suffering. Right. And so I think that I would presume that many people who kind of follow the productivity lore are people that feel like they always need to be productive at every minute of their lives. But you should really explore this in the mindful productivity, that there are actually, I think the thing that people who seek to be more productive actually need are ways to be less productive, and permission for themselves to be less productive. And I do think that, the informal tagline of Rad Reads is come for the productivity, stay for the existential. And so for those of you listening to this, me talk for the first time, you're probably like, whoa, like, this is not what I thought I was going to hear when we're talking productivity with Ali. But I do think that productivity is actually the Trojan horse into some of these bigger questions, right? Why do we want more time? Right? And again, we did our philosophical bit earlier in the conversation, but I would be careful. And I think this would be wonderful for you to explore, is like, is it okay to not be productive? Or when did being productive become the dominant virtue that we desire, that has enabled the entire crop of, people like you and I? I mean, I think there's some really interesting questions. Oliver Berkman, you should try to interview him as well. He writes for The Guardian. He writes a lot about like the darker side of productivity, as does Jocelyn Glei. Writes a lot about
Jocelyn Glei. Okay.
GLEI. She's really, really, really talented. And also another one you should interview is Anne Helen Peterson from BuzzFeed.
Okay.
She wrote that viral piece, I think it was last year, on millennial burnout.
Oh yeah.
So she ties a lot of this like productivity culture into capitalism. So it could be an interesting angle for you to explore.
Yeah, that's kind of what I want the unofficial tagline of the tagline of the book to be as well. Like, come for the productivity and then get hit over the head with the whole like existential meaning.
Yeah.
Why does this all matter? Type stuff.
All of you who thought we were going to talk about keyboard shortcuts, no, guess again.
Okay, sick. I will check these people out. So Oliver Berkman, Ashley Willens, Jocelyn Glei, and Helen Peterson. Anyone else off the top of your head that you've come across who writes stuff about this sort of thing? I'm very keen to chat to as many people about this as possible, just to help me think.
Yeah, Ashley Willens is, Adam Grant has some good.
Oh yeah.
Good perspectives on. He has like a different, right? I think I know your book will be like a different lens on kind of these productivity ideas. So finding the thinkers that are there. There's a gentleman, I think that if you really want to get into existential, you should look at the relationship that people have with time.
Yeah. Because
productivity is the promise of more time. And in fact, so much of life, you're being sold more time, right? Get more time, right? Yeah. Download this app, get more time back. Yeah. And the complicated relationship, I think his name is, I'll find it for you, but another gentleman who really like looked at our relationship with time And he had a great point. He's like, think about this concept of buying back time,
Mm,
right? You can pay someone to do your laundry. You can pay someone to drive you places,
yeah,
but you can't pay someone to teach your kid how to ride your bikes. You can't pay someone to go to the opera,
sure.
but you can't pay someone to read a book for you.
Yeah,
And so buying your time back really has a diminishing returns
yeah.
component to it as well. I'll find
Sick.
his name and send.
Yeah. Okay. Great. This is fantastic. I love having these sorts of conversations because they just open up more avenues to explore and questions to ask and things. So this
Well,
is
here's
really
a
good stuff.
great quote. I believe it was the poet. What was his name? John O'Donohue.
Mm,
You should definitely. He's deceased, but he has this phenomenal interview with Krista Tippett on Being. I think it was the most popular On Being episode ever. He's an Irish poet, but he has a whole thing about time and how we've got it all wrong from like a spiritual but non-religious way of
yeah.
seeing things. But he has this great line that I almost haunts me. And the line is, stress is a perverted relationship with time.
Mm, interesting.
For those of you on this call, go look up John O'Donohue On Being podcast. I think I've listened to that podcast 20 times. It's like a religious experience listening
Oh,
to it.
perfect. That's
And it
going to be
actually hits
my
on a lot of these anxieties that we've been talking about through a
listening
different lens.
for the rest of the evening. This is good stuff.
Yes.
Um, Sick. All right, Kay, thank you. This has been so much fun. Anything you'd like to plug slash any final message you'd like to share with the audience?
No, I would just say that don't sleep on this self-awareness. I think some of you might who are hearing me speak for the first time might have a little bit of buyer's remorse, being like, wait, this isn't productivity. They're talking about dying and perverted relationship with time and all this stuff. But I really encourage you that behind the purchase of the Aurora ring, there's actually a much deeper existential question that you're wrestling with. And it's not, doesn't have to be scary. Like, lean into that question, grab it by the horns, play with it, dance with it. And then still buy the Aura ring. I think the Aura ring is a great product. But the ring in it of itself is not going to answer the question that probably led you to buy it. And so I hope I hope if you take one thing away from this is that, you're going to see all these shiny new toys from, the likes of me and Ali and tactics and techniques and all that crap. Yeah, they help, but the real thing that moves the needle is the why, the underlying desire behind it. And the sooner you tap into that, the more joyful of a life you'll live.
That is good stuff. Very good stuff. Kay, thank you. This has been a real pleasure. Links to all of your stuff is in the video description for anyone who wants to check it out. Sign up to Rad Reads. Rad Reads is one of the few newsletters that I read more regularly than others. So it's a fantastic read. A lot of the time when it comes out consistently, which is also great because now I've started not being consistent with my own newsletter because I've realized it doesn't really matter
Yes.
at the end of the day and no one cares. So very liberating. So thank you for that, Kay. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ali. Always a pleasure. Bye, everyone.